The morning sun painted the Rocky Mountains in shades of gold and orange as James Mitchell guided his horse through the narrow canyon trail. The experienced mountain man had spent 15 years trading with various Native American tribes, learning their languages and earning their respect through fair dealings. His weathered face showed the marks of countless adventures, but his sharp blue eyes remained alert to every sound and movement in the wilderness. James carried a pack loaded with quality trade goods, steel knives, colorful beads, warm blankets, and metal cooking pots that the Cherokee people valued highly. He was heading toward the summer camp of Chief Walking Bear's band, a 3-day journey through some of the most beautiful but dangerous territory in the region. The Cherokee had always treated him with honor, and he looked forward to seeing old friends and making new trades. As he rode deeper into the mountains, James noticed fresh bear tracks in the soft earth near a creek. The prints were massive, easily the size of dinner plates, indicating a large grizzly bear was somewhere in the area. He made a mental note to be extra careful and keep his rifle ready. Grizzly bears were unpredictable creatures, and even an experienced woodsman like James respected their power and territorial nature. The trail wound through dense pine forests and across rocky slopes where wildflowers bloomed in colorful patches. James enjoyed the solitude and beauty of the mountains, but he never let his guard down. Survival in this harsh landscape required constant attention to details that could mean the difference between life and death. By afternoon, James reached a clearing where he decided to rest his horse and eat some dried meat and hardtack. As he sat on a fallen log, he heard something that made his blood run cold, the terrified screams of a child echoing through the forest. Without hesitation, he grabbed his rifle and ran toward the sound, his heart pounding with urgency. The screams led him to a small meadow where a horrific scene unfolded before his eyes. An enormous grizzly bear, standing nearly 8 feet tall on its hind legs, was attacking a young Cherokee boy who couldn't have been more than 10 years old. The child was trapped against a large boulder, using a small wooden spear to desperately try to keep the massive predator at bay. James could see that the boy was already injured. Blood stained his traditional deerskin clothing, and he was clearly weakening from fear and exhaustion. The grizzly, probably protecting nearby cubs or defending its territory, showed no signs of backing down. Its powerful jaws snapped inches from the boy's face, while its razor-sharp claws swiped at him with deadly force. Without thinking about his own safety, James raised his rifle and took careful aim. He knew he would only get one chance. If he wounded the bear without killing it, the animal would become even more dangerous and likely kill both him and the child. The distance was about 50 yards, and he needed to place the shot perfectly to drop the massive creature instantly. James held his breath, steadied his aim, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle's boom echoed across the meadow like thunder. The heavy lead ball struck the grizzly bear in the head, and the animal collapsed immediately, its massive body hitting the ground with a tremendous thud that shook the earth. The Cherokee boy collapsed against the boulder, sobbing with relief and shock. James quickly reloaded his rifle, keeping it ready in case the bear was still alive or if there were other threats nearby. He approached carefully, confirming that the grizzly was dead before rushing to help the injured child. The boy was conscious but badly hurt. Long claw marks across his chest and arms bled freely, and his left leg appeared to be broken or badly sprained. James could see fear and pain in the child's dark eyes, but also a brave spirit that had helped him survive the terrifying encounter. Using his limited Cherokee language skills and hand gestures, James tried to communicate with the boy. He learned that the child's name was Little Wolf, and he had been gathering medicinal plants for his grandmother when he accidentally wandered too close to the bear's territory. The animal had chased him into the meadow where the attack occurred. James knew that Little Wolf needed immediate medical attention, but they were at least 2 days' travel from the Cherokee camp. He also realized that moving the injured boy might cause more harm, especially if his leg was broken. The mountain man faced a difficult decision. Should he try to carry Little Wolf to safety, or should he make camp here and tend to the boy's wounds while hoping that a Cherokee search party would find them? Looking at the darkening sky and feeling the temperature beginning to drop, James decided to make a temporary shelter in the meadow. He used his horse's blanket and some pine branches to create a windbreak near the boulder where Little Wolf could rest comfortably. Then, he started a small fire to provide warmth and light as night approached. Using skills learned from various tribes over the years, James cleaned Little Wolf's wounds with water from his canteen and applied healing herbs he carried in his pack. He fashioned a splint for the boy's injured leg using straight branches and strips of cloth torn from his own shirt. Little Wolf endured the painful treatment bravely, occasionally whimpering but never crying out. As the stars appeared overhead, James gave the boy small sips of water and tiny pieces of dried meat to help restore his strength. He wrapped Little Wolf in his own warm coat and positioned himself between the child and the surrounding forest, rifle ready to defend against any other predators that might be attracted by the scent of blood. Throughout the long night, James kept the fire burning and watched over Little Wolf, who drifted in and out of sleep. The mountain man found himself thinking about the courage the young Cherokee boy had shown when facing almost certain death. Most grown men would have panicked in such a situation, but Little Wolf had fought bravely against impossible odds. As dawn broke over the mountains, James made a crucial decision that would change both their lives forever. He would stay with Little Wolf for as long as necessary, even if it meant missing important trading opportunities or facing unknown dangers. Something about the brave young boy had touched the grizzled mountain man's heart, creating a bond that went beyond simple human decency. The first day of their wilderness ordeal was ending, but James had no way of knowing that this rescue would lead to one of the most important relationships of his entire life. Little Wolf's tribe would soon discover that their missing child was safe, but they would also learn something remarkable about the white mountain man who had risked everything to save a Cherokee boy's life. The second morning brought new challenges as Little Wolf's fever began to rise. James touched the boy's forehead and felt the dangerous heat that often followed serious injuries. The claw wounds were clean and properly bandaged, but infection was always a deadly threat in the wilderness where medical supplies were limited. James knew he needed to find better medicine than the basic herbs in his pack. He remembered seeing Cherokee healing plants growing near the creek where he had noticed the bear tracks. Leaving Little Wolf wrapped warmly by the fire, James ventured into the forest to gather what he could remember from his years of learning tribal medicine. Near the water, James found wild willow bark, which Cherokee healers used to reduce fever and pain. He also collected some purple coneflower and golden seal root, plants he had seen medicine men use for fighting infection. The mountain man worked carefully, making sure to take only what he needed while leaving the plants healthy to grow again. When James returned to their makeshift camp, Little Wolf was awake and trying to sit up despite his injuries. The boy's eyes were brighter than the day before, and he managed a small smile when he saw James approaching. This simple gesture filled the mountain man's heart with hope and strengthened his determination to keep the child safe. Using his small metal pot, James boiled water and made healing teas from the plants he had gathered. Little Wolf drank the bitter medicines without complaint, trusting the strange white man who had saved his life. As the day progressed, the boy's fever began to drop, and he was able to eat small amounts of food. During the quiet afternoon hours, James and Little Wolf began to communicate more effectively. The mountain man's Cherokee vocabulary was limited, but Little Wolf was learning some English words quickly. They used hand gestures, drawings in the dirt, and simple words to share stories and get to know each other better. Little Wolf told James about his family. His mother, Singing Bird, his father, Gray Eagle, who was one of Chief Walking Bear's most trusted warriors, and his beloved grandmother, Wise Owl, who had taught him about medicinal plants. The boy explained that he had been gathering herbs for his grandmother's arthritis medicine when the bear attacked him. James shared stories about his own life, describing his lonely cabin in the mountains and his travels throughout the Western Territories. He told Little Wolf about the different tribes he had traded with and the beautiful places he had seen. The boy listened with fascination, asking questions about the world beyond his tribe's traditional territory. As the second night fell, James noticed storm clouds gathering over the mountains. The air pressure was dropping, and he could smell rain approaching. He quickly improved their shelter, using his horse's saddle blanket and more pine branches to create better protection from the coming weather. The storm arrived with powerful winds and heavy rain that lasted most of the night. James kept the fire burning under a makeshift roof of branches and constantly checked on Little Wolf to make sure the boy stayed warm and dry. Lightning illuminated the meadow in brief, dramatic flashes while thunder echoed through the canyons like the voices of angry spirits. Despite the frightening storm, Little Wolf seemed more comfortable than he had since the bear attack. His wounds were healing well, and his fever had completely disappeared. The boy's natural resilience and James's careful nursing were helping him recover faster than either of them had dared to hope. During the long, stormy night, James found himself thinking about his solitary life in the mountains. He had always been content with his independence, but taking care of Little Wolf made him realize how much he missed having someone to protect and care about. The brave Cherokee boy was awakening feelings the mountain man thought he had buried years ago. When dawn finally broke after the storm, the meadow looked completely different. The rain had washed away many of their tracks, and new streams of water flowed down from the rocky slopes above. James realized that any Cherokee search party would have a much harder time finding them now that the storm had erased most signs of their presence. Little Wolf's leg was healing well enough for him to stand and take a few careful steps with James's help. The boy was eager to try walking, but the mountain man insisted on taking things slowly to avoid re-injuring the healing bones and muscles. They spent the morning doing gentle exercises that would help Little Wolf regain his strength. Around midday, James made a decision that would prove crucial to their survival and rescue. He climbed to the highest point near their camp and used his knowledge of Cherokee signaling methods to create a smoke signal. Using damp pine needles and specific patterns, he sent a message that would be recognized by any Cherokee scout who saw it. The signal conveyed a simple but important message. A Cherokee child was safe but needed help, and a friend was caring for him. James repeated the signal pattern several times throughout the afternoon, hoping that someone from Little Wolf's tribe would see the smoke and understand its meaning. Little Wolf watched with amazement as James created the traditional smoke signals his own people used. The boy had not realized that this white mountain man knew so much about Cherokee ways and customs. This knowledge increased Little Wolf's respect for his rescuer and made him feel more confident about their chances of being found. As the second day of their wilderness stay came to an end, both James and Little Wolf felt stronger and more hopeful. The boy's injuries were healing remarkably well, and they had established a comfortable routine of caring for each other. James had proven himself to be not just a brave rescuer, but also a skilled healer and a caring friend. That evening, as they sat by the fire sharing another simple meal of dried meat and wild berries James had gathered, Little Wolf made an important decision. No matter what happened next, he would tell his tribe about the white mountain man's kindness and courage. This stranger had risked his own life to save a Cherokee child, and such bravery deserved to be honored and remembered. James, meanwhile, was beginning to understand that rescuing Little Wolf had changed him in ways he was only starting to recognize. The lonely mountain man was discovering that caring for another person brought meaning and purpose to his life that he had never experienced before. He was no longer just a trader passing through Cherokee territory. He was becoming part of Little Wolf's story, and the boy was becoming part of his. The third morning dawned clear and beautiful, with golden sunlight streaming through the pine trees and warming the meadow where James and Little Wolf had spent 2 nights together. Little Wolf was now strong enough to walk short distances without help, though he still favored his injured leg. His wounds had closed cleanly, and the infection that James had feared never developed. As they shared breakfast beside their campfire, Little Wolf suddenly held up his hand for silence. His young ears had detected something that James's older hearing had missed, the distant sound of voices calling through the forest. The Cherokee search party had finally arrived, drawn by the smoke signals James had sent the previous day. Little Wolf called out in his native language, his voice carrying clearly across the meadow and into the surrounding trees. Almost immediately, answering calls came back from multiple directions. The search party was large and had spread out to cover more ground, but they were close enough now to hear the boy's voice. James quickly kicked dirt over their campfire and gathered his belongings, not wanting to be mistaken for a threat when the Cherokee warriors arrived. He helped Little Wolf stand and made sure the boy was ready to greet his rescuers. The mountain man felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that Little Wolf would soon be safe with his own people, but sadness that their unique friendship might be ending. The first Cherokee warrior to reach the meadow was a tall, powerfully built man with traditional facial tattoos and eagle feathers in his long black hair. He carried a war lance and moved with the silent grace of a skilled hunter. When he saw Little Wolf standing safely beside a white stranger, his stern expression changed to one of amazement and gratitude. More warriors emerged from the forest within minutes. 6 experienced fighters who had been searching desperately for the missing boy. Among them was Gray Eagle, Little Wolf's father, whose face showed the strain and worry of 3 sleepless days and nights. When he saw his son alive and relatively well, the proud warrior's eyes filled with tears of joy and relief. Little Wolf ran to his father as fast as his injured leg would allow, and Gray Eagle swept him up in a powerful embrace. The reunion was emotional and beautiful, with father and son speaking rapidly in Cherokee while the other warriors gathered around them. James stood quietly nearby, respecting the private family moment while keeping his hands visible to show he meant no harm. After the initial excitement of the reunion, Gray Eagle approached James with formal dignity. Through Little Wolf, who served as translator, the Cherokee warrior learned the incredible story of how this white mountain man had risked his life to save a Cherokee child from a grizzly bear. The other warriors listened with growing amazement as Little Wolf described James's courage, medical skill, and kindness. Gray Eagle examined the dead grizzly bear, which still lay where it had fallen 3 days earlier. The size of the animal impressed even these experienced hunters. It was one of the largest bears any of them had ever seen. They could easily imagine how terrifying the attack must have been for a young boy, and their respect for James's marksmanship and bravery grew even stronger. The Cherokee warriors were also amazed by the quality of medical care James had provided. Little Wolf's wounds were healing perfectly. His broken leg had been properly set, and his overall condition was much better than they had dared to hope. Many white men they had encountered knew nothing about Indian medicine, but James had used their own healing plants with obvious skill and knowledge. As the group prepared to travel back to the Cherokee camp, Gray Eagle made a formal gesture that surprised everyone, including the other warriors. He removed a beautiful beaded necklace from around his own neck, a family heirloom that had belonged to his grandfather, and placed it around James's neck. This was a tremendous honor, indicating that Gray Eagle considered the mountain man to be family. Through Little Wolf's translation, Gray Eagle spoke words that would stay with James for the rest of his life. The Cherokee warrior said that James had not just saved a boy's life. He had saved the future of their family line, because Little Wolf was destined to become a great leader of their people. Such a debt could never be fully repaid, but Gray Eagle promised that James would always be welcome among the Cherokee as a brother. The journey back to the Cherokee camp took most of the day, with frequent stops to allow Little Wolf to rest his injured leg. James found himself surrounded by warriors who treated him with respect and friendship rather than suspicion. They shared their food with him, included him in their conversations through Little Wolf's translation, and even taught him some new Cherokee words and phrases. As they traveled, James learned more about Little Wolf's family and their place in Cherokee society. Gray Eagle was indeed one of Chief Walking Bear's most trusted advisors, and Little Wolf's grandfather had been a famous war chief who had led successful battles against enemy tribes. Little Wolf himself was already showing signs of exceptional intelligence and leadership potential, which explained why his disappearance had prompted such an extensive search effort. The Cherokee camp, when they finally reached it in the late afternoon, was a bustling community of over 200 people. Dozens of traditional bark and hide lodges were arranged in family groups around a central area where cooking fires burned and children played. James had visited many Indian camps over the years, but he was impressed by the organization and prosperity of this particular Cherokee band. Word of their arrival spread quickly through the camp, and people emerged from their lodges to see the white man who had saved Little Wolf's life. Singing Bird, Little Wolf's mother, rushed forward to embrace her son while tears of joy streamed down her face. She then approached James and spoke to him in halting English, thanking him for bringing her child home safely. Chief Walking Bear himself came to greet them, accompanied by several elder warriors and the tribe's medicine man. The chief was a dignified man in his 50s with intelligent eyes and an air of natural authority. He listened carefully as Gray Eagle and Little Wolf told the story of the rescue, occasionally asking questions that showed his keen interest in every detail. After hearing the complete account, Chief Walking Bear made an announcement that surprised everyone in the gathering crowd. He declared that James Mitchell would be formally adopted into the Cherokee tribe as an honorary member, with all the rights and privileges that such status provided. This was an extremely rare honor that had been granted to very few white men in Cherokee history. The ceremony would take place the following day, but first there would be a feast to celebrate Little Wolf's safe return and to honor the brave mountain man who had made it possible. Women began preparing special foods while men gathered wood for a large ceremonial fire. The entire camp buzzed with excitement as preparations for the celebration began. As evening approached, James found himself seated in a place of honor beside Chief Walking Bear's lodge, still wearing Gray Eagle's ancestral necklace and overwhelmed by the kindness and respect being shown to him. Little Wolf sat beside him, proudly translating conversations and making sure his rescuer felt welcome and appreciated. That night, as James lay on soft buffalo robes inside a guest lodge, he reflected on how dramatically his life had changed in just 3 days. He had entered Cherokee territory as a simple trader, but he was about to become an adopted member of one of the most respected tribes in the region. The lonely mountain man had found a family, and Little Wolf had gained not just his life, but a lifelong protector and friend. The 4th day began with elaborate preparations for James's adoption ceremony, and the feast celebrating Little Wolf's safe return. Cherokee women worked together to prepare traditional foods, including venison stew, cornbread, wild berry cakes, and roasted vegetables gathered from the surrounding mountains. The air filled with wonderful aromas as cooking fires burned throughout the camp. James spent the morning learning about Cherokee customs from Little Wolf and other members of the tribe. The boy had recovered remarkably well from his ordeal and was eager to teach his rescuer about his people's traditions, language, and beliefs. James discovered that Cherokee society was far more complex and sophisticated than many white settlers realized. Gray Eagle presented James with traditional Cherokee clothing for the ceremony, a beautifully decorated deerskin shirt with intricate beadwork, leather leggings with fringe, and soft moccasins that fit perfectly. The garments had been made by Singing Bird and other women in the family, working through the night to create appropriate attire for their honored guest. As James changed into his Cherokee clothing, he felt a profound transformation taking place within himself. These were not just garments. They were symbols of acceptance and belonging that meant more to him than any material wealth he had ever possessed. The lonely mountain man was becoming part of something larger and more meaningful than his solitary existence. The adoption ceremony began at noon, with all members of the tribe gathered in a large circle around the central fire. Chief Walking Bear stood with the tribal elders, medicine man, and most respected warriors, creating an impressive display of Cherokee leadership and tradition. James felt both honored and nervous as he took his place at the center of the circle. The medicine man, an ancient Cherokee named White Hawk, began the ceremony by burning sacred herbs and offering prayers to the spirits of the four directions. He spoke in the old language, calling upon the ancestors to witness this rare event and asking for their blessing on the white man who had shown such courage and compassion toward a Cherokee child. Chief Walking Bear then addressed the assembled tribe, speaking in Cherokee, while Little Wolf quietly translated for James. The chief recounted the story of the bear attack and rescue, emphasizing James's bravery, medical skills, and the selfless way he had cared for Little Wolf without expecting any reward. The crowd listened with rapt attention, many hearing these details for the first time. Gray Eagle stepped forward to speak about the personal debt his family owed to James. He explained how the mountain man had risked his own life to save a Cherokee child he had never met before, then provided excellent medical care that had ensured Little Wolf's complete recovery. Such actions, Gray Eagle declared, proved that James possessed the true spirit of a Cherokee warrior. The formal adoption ritual involved several symbolic elements that James participated in with deep respect and humility. White Hawk painted traditional designs on James's face using natural pigments, each mark representing different virtues like courage, wisdom, and loyalty. The designs connected James to the spiritual world of the Cherokee people and marked him as one of their own. Chief Walking Bear then presented James with a new Cherokee name, Bear Slayer, which would be his official identity within the tribe. The name honored his defeat of the grizzly bear and would remind future generations of the day a white mountain man proved his worth through extraordinary courage and compassion. The ceremony concluded with James taking a formal oath of loyalty to the Cherokee people, promising to respect their customs, protect their interests, and consider their welfare as important as his own. He spoke the words in Cherokee, having practiced them carefully with Little Wolf's help, and his sincere delivery moved many in the audience to tears. As the ceremony ended, the entire tribe welcomed James with enthusiastic cheers and warm embraces. He was no longer an outsider looking in. He was officially a member of the Cherokee Nation with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities that such status entailed. The transformation from lonely mountain man to tribal brother was now complete and permanent. The feast that followed was unlike anything James had ever experienced. Long tables made from split logs were loaded with an incredible variety of foods, many prepared using recipes passed down through generations of Cherokee families. James sat in a place of honor between Chief Walking Bear and Gray Eagle, still amazed by the dramatic change in his circumstances. Little Wolf stayed close to his rescuer throughout the celebration, proudly introducing Bear Slayer to relatives and friends who wanted to meet the famous white man who had saved the boy's life. James found himself overwhelmed by the warmth and acceptance shown by every member of the tribe, from the youngest children to the oldest elders. As evening approached, Cherokee musicians began playing traditional songs on drums, flutes, and stringed instruments. Dancers in colorful regalia performed ancient dances that told stories of hunting, warfare, and spiritual journeys. James watched with fascination as the rich cultural heritage of his new people came alive through music and movement. During a quiet moment in the celebration, Chief Walking Bear pulled James aside for a private conversation. Through Little Wolf's translation, the chief explained that the Cherokee Nation was facing difficult times as white settlers moved increasingly into their traditional territories. Having a respected white man as an adopted tribal member could prove valuable in future negotiations and conflicts. The chief asked James if he would consider serving as an unofficial ambassador between the Cherokee people and white traders, government officials, and settlers. His knowledge of both cultures, combined with his newfound status within the tribe, made him uniquely qualified for such a role. James accepted this responsibility with pride, understanding that it would give greater meaning and purpose to his life. As the celebration continued late into the night, James reflected on the incredible journey that had brought him to this moment. For days ago, he had been a solitary trader following a familiar route through the mountains. Now he was bear slayer, adopted Cherokee warrior, and protector of a brave boy who had become like a son to him. The bond between James and Little Wolf had grown stronger with each passing day. The mountain man had discovered that saving the boy's life was only the beginning of their relationship. Little Wolf looked up to him as a mentor and second father, while James felt a protective love for the child that filled the empty places in his heart. When the formal celebration finally ended, James was given a permanent place to stay in the Cherokee camp. Gray Eagle and Singing Bird insisted that he consider their lodge his home for as long as he wished to remain with the tribe. Little Wolf was thrilled to have his rescuer living nearby, and the two quickly established a routine of daily activities that strengthened their friendship. As James lay down to sleep in his new home, surrounded by the sounds of a peaceful Cherokee camp, he realized that his old life as a lonely mountain man was truly over. He had found something precious in these mountains, not gold or furs, but a family, a purpose, and a young Cherokee boy whose courage and spirit had changed his life forever. The weeks following James's adoption into the Cherokee tribe brought remarkable changes to both his life and that of Little Wolf. The mountain man quickly adapted to Cherokee customs and daily routines, learning new skills while sharing his own knowledge with tribal members. His trading experience proved valuable to the Cherokee, who benefited from his understanding of fair prices and quality goods. Little Wolf recovered completely from his injuries and threw himself into learning everything James could teach him about the outside world. The boy showed exceptional intelligence and curiosity, asking endless questions about white settlements, different tribes, and the changing political situation across the Western Territories. James became both teacher and student as he educated Little Wolf while deepening his own understanding of Cherokee culture. James's role as an unofficial ambassador began to take shape as tensions increased between Cherokee lands and expanding white settlements. His unique position as a respected white man, who was also an adopted Cherokee warrior, made him invaluable in negotiations and communications. Government agents and tribal leaders alike sought his advice on difficult diplomatic situations. During his first summer with the tribe, James helped broker several important trade agreements that benefited both Cherokee families and white merchants. His reputation for fairness and honesty had followed him from his mountain trading days, and both sides trusted him to negotiate deals that would be honored. These successes enhanced his standing within the Cherokee community and proved Chief Walking Bear's wisdom in adopting him. Little Wolf accompanied James on many of these diplomatic missions, serving as translator and learning the complex art of negotiation between different cultures. The boy demonstrated natural leadership abilities that impressed everyone who worked with him. James took pride in mentoring the young Cherokee, watching him develop skills that would serve him well in the challenging years ahead. As autumn arrived, James faced his first major test as a Cherokee advocate. A group of aggressive white settlers had begun encroaching on traditional Cherokee hunting grounds, cutting trees, and building cabins without permission. The situation was becoming dangerous, with young Cherokee warriors wanting to drive out the intruders by force, while tribal elders preferred diplomatic solutions. James volunteered to travel to the nearest government fort to speak with military commanders about the illegal settlement activity. Little Wolf insisted on accompanying him, despite his parents' concerns about the danger. The boy argued that he needed to understand how white authority worked if he was going to help his people in the future. The journey to Fort Harrison took 5 days through difficult mountain terrain. James and Little Wolf traveled carefully, avoiding areas where they might encounter hostile settlers or military patrols who might not understand their mission. Along the way, James continued Little Wolf's education about white customs and the complex legal systems that govern territorial disputes. At Fort Harrison, James met with Colonel William Thompson, the commanding officer responsible for maintaining peace between settlers and native tribes. The colonel was initially suspicious of a white man dressed as a Cherokee and claiming to represent tribal interests, but James's reputation and documentation of his adoption status eventually convinced the officer to listen. Little Wolf impressed Colonel Thompson with his intelligence and eloquent English as he described the Cherokee perspective on the land dispute. The boy spoke passionately about his people's ancestral rights, while maintaining the diplomatic respect necessary for successful negotiations. James felt proud watching his young protege handle such a difficult situation with maturity beyond his years. The negotiations lasted 3 days, during which James and Little Wolf worked together to present a compelling case for Cherokee land rights. They provided maps showing traditional boundaries, explained the historical significance of the disputed territory, and offered reasonable compromises that would satisfy both sides. Their teamwork demonstrated the powerful combination of James's experience and Little Wolf's cultural knowledge. Colonel Thompson eventually agreed to send troops to remove the illegal settlers and establish clear boundary markers to prevent future conflicts. This victory was significant not just for resolving the immediate crisis, but for establishing a precedent that Cherokee rights would be respected by military authorities. James and Little Wolf had achieved something that might have been impossible for either Cherokee leaders or white officials working alone. The journey home brought opportunities for James and Little Wolf to strengthen their bond through shared challenges and successes. They faced dangerous weather, encountered unfriendly travelers, and navigated difficult terrain together. Each obstacle overcome increased their mutual respect and deepened their father-son relationship. When they returned to the Cherokee camp with news of their diplomatic success, the entire tribe celebrated their achievement. Chief Walking Bear praised both James and Little Wolf for their skillful negotiations, noting that the boy had shown wisdom far beyond his years. The chief announced that Little Wolf would begin formal training as a future tribal leader, with James serving as one of his primary mentors. Gray Eagle and Singing Bird expressed their deep gratitude to James for not only saving their son's life, but also helping him develop into a young man with exceptional diplomatic skills. They recognized that Little Wolf's future as a Cherokee leader had been shaped significantly by his relationship with his white adoptive father. The boy's unique understanding of both cultures would serve him well in the challenging years ahead. As winter approached, James reflected on the incredible transformation in his life since that fateful day when he heard a child's terrified screams in the mountain meadow. He had gained far more than he had given: a loving family, respected position in Cherokee society, meaningful work as a cultural bridge builder, and the deep satisfaction of mentoring an exceptional young man. Little Wolf had also changed dramatically from the frightened boy who had faced death at the claws of a grizzly bear. His harrowing experience and rescue had taught him about courage, resilience, and the importance of building alliances across cultural boundaries. His friendship with James had opened his mind to possibilities beyond the traditional Cherokee way of life, while deepening his appreciation for his own heritage. The loyalty that the Cherokee tribe had sworn to James following his rescue of Little Wolf had grown into something even stronger: genuine love and respect for a white man who had proven himself worthy of full membership in their community. James was no longer an adopted Cherokee in name only. He had become a true son of the people through his actions, dedication, and unwavering commitment to their welfare. As James and Little Wolf sat together by the fire on cold winter evenings, sharing stories and planning for future diplomatic missions, both knew that their bond would last forever. The mountain man had found his true calling as protector and mentor to a Cherokee boy destined for greatness, while Little Wolf had gained a second father whose courage and wisdom would guide him throughout his life. Their story had become legend among the Cherokee people. The tale of how a white mountain man's split-second decision to rescue a boy from a bear attack had created bonds of friendship and loyalty that would influence tribal history for generations to come. James Mitchell, now known as Bear Slayer, had saved more than one young life that day in the mountain meadow. He had saved the future of Cherokee diplomacy and cross-cultural understanding in an era when such skills would prove essential for survival.